And we are live. I am joined by a special guest, Mr. Pete Quinones. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. What's
Hmm.
happening, A?
Oh, doing good. Just looking at apartments because I'm moving. Dealing with the college life, unfortunately, at that stage of my life.
Yeah, and I'm in the process of moving too. So yeah, I get it. I mean, there are a few things that are as stressful as moving.
Yeah, that's just a massive pain. Moving all the shit in the truck, or car, you gotta pack it all up, then unpack it. It always seems like unpacking, you always lose something for some reason, always. It's like there's like this invisible ether. It's like the socks that always go missing, right? You're just like, is there an ether just that sucks these up? It's just like, well, why socks specifically? You know what I mean? It seems like
Yeah,
something always goes missing.
and it's
But
usually our fault. We just lost it.
yeah, but I like to blame the ether. It's the ether's fault. But getting into more, I guess, pertinent, kind of realpolitik political issues, especially regarding your home, your current place of residence, Alabama. So recently, in case you're not aware, this did just happen today, as far as I can tell. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that Alabama must have two black congressional districts because of diluting black power, essentially. Um, and there was basically no resistance to this, and it just passed. Just
Well, was
and
it who? I mean, it that should have been six. It should have been 5-4. Who weren't over the other side?
I believe it was Gorsuch.
Oh well, that makes
Mm.
sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it
Gorsuch was.
also doesn't help the fact that this kind of also shines the light on elite theory again. That like, if this was a leftist court, they would never like a judge would never change sides to side with a conservative or right wing on anything. They would never break ranks. You just don't see that. And kind of the main point I kind of made on Twitter was with traders like this, who needs the left because they do the work for the left anyway.
Well, I've been saying that for a while. If I don't need leftists to call me a fascist on Twitter, there's plenty of people who call themselves right wingers who are willing to do it. Even right libertarians who are supposed to be like freedom of association. Oh, we believe in freedom of association. Voluntary segregation. But it's almost like they're like, okay, well, I believe that, but I'm still going to. If you believe that, then I'm going to attack you for it. It's almost like they adopt that progressive thing. I mean, I've seen so many boomers and like conservatives recently. Oh, we have freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean you have freedom of consequences. What does that mean? What do you mean when you say that? Do you mean that somebody's opinion should, you know, a doctor's opinion doesn't, disqualifies them from being able to perform surgery or something like that? I mean, I've had one surgery in my life, one major surgery in my life. It was a black doctor. Guy did an incredible job. Always be thankful to him. And it's like I didn't look and go, I don't. The dude's top in his field. So it's like I have no problem with I have no problem with being who you want to live around. And there are some black businesses I would have no problem doing business with. Um, but that doesn't mean that I want to live around. It's just really weird. We live in this really weird time where just your opinions, just your thoughts. What Paul Gottfried talks about, the therapeutic state, where it seems like we're getting to the point where people who have opinions like I do, where it's like, well, I mean, when I move somewhere, I want to know what the demographics is. I want to know what the crime is. And whenever anyone says demographics or crime, we know what they're talking about. That'll get you like arrested and thrown in a hospital and possibly even pumped full of drugs because there's something wrong with you. There's something sick about you if you hold an opinion that it's like, oh, you don't mind a black person operating on you. You don't mind a doing business with you know frequenting a black business, but why don't you want to live around them? Well, I mean, I, I don't know. I like people who share my values and look and sound like me.
Yeah, that's just an inherently irrational thing to do. But of course, these people have adopted the boomer truth. They still hold that deep down. Even though they say they don't, they do. They hold the moral kind of convictions of the progressive religion still, and they're kind of bound by that. And it's still it controls them. Um, and that's what they believe, even if they don't say it explicitly. That kind of really doesn't matter though, because progressives have total and absolute control over everything, and they decide what the moral majority will be on any given issue, as we've seen recently. They can push anything they want and make that the new crime thing pretty much every day, and they'll adopt it as if it was part of their agenda.
Yeah, I mean, how do you expect to accomplish anything, get your goals through, have a society that, this is something I try not to, rep on libertarians too much, because I used to be a libertarian, and it's obvious, it's like a former smoker who doesn't want to be around smokers and stuff like that. Just come off like that. But they say they want we need a free society. Was how do you get there? How do you get there if and this goes to conservatives, this goes to the dissident right. How do you get there unless you have control of the narrative? I mean, you have to be able to create your own narratives, and you not only have to be able to creating your own narrative is easy. Getting it in front of people is the hard part. Letting people hear it, and it being legitimate in people's eyes. That's probably the most important thing. It's why I'm I'm not an advocate ever for like overthrowing raising up arms against the government.
In
Unless
Minecraft.
Yeah, I'm not an advocate for that at all, because first of all, you're probably going to lose. I mean, it's almost certain. And second of all, you just don't, in the eyes, you want the public to be on your side. You want them to have, to feel for you. And you're not going to have their support unless you're doing something that they see legitimate. So, my whole idea when I talk about, you know, either you or somebody that you share values with, you're really close with, running for sheriff of your town, and basically everybody running and just taking over like the school board, the county seat, whatever. And you start ruling it that way. That way, when, if the feds come calling, you can be like, no, you're not going to do that here. And people are going to look, and they're going to, they're not going to see, a bunch of hayseeds who, are picking up arms against the government. They're going to see a local government of elected people who are like, no, you can't come in here. We don't, it's not the way we do things. It actually lends it some legitimacy. And I think that a lot of people just don't see that. They think that, you can have force, you can use force. And as long as you're morally right, well, that's all that matters. Well, you could be morally right and like 100% dead, and people are calling you a terrorist, a criminal, and your family, doesn't remember your name. Or you can, you know, find a more legitimate way to do it. I think that's really, I think that's what's most important at this point, is that you want your ideas to be seen as legitimate. And the only way you can do that is to have power, to have power and have control of a narrative.
Yeah, I actually attended my local GOP member board for the first time ever, and it was 7 people showed up, and it was all boomers and like a few millennials and like 2 Zoomers, and that's it. So, I mean, the effort to take over these places is right there. I mean, it really is not complicated. However, I think the bigger issue with localism, even though I think that's pretty much our only option at this point for avenues of power, is that like it just isn't sexy like the presidency or like the State Department or like the LARP that people like to hold on to, that we're going to storm the Capitol and like take over back control of the government. It doesn't have that appeal, right? That like drives you to want to go do it, or because it's it's cool to do that, even though if it's not practical, it'll probably get you dead or put you in a federal prison, being beaten up 4 times, like we see with the QAnon shaman.
Well, I mean, would you rather, I was a musician at one point, I had a band, we played our own music, and we tried to get signed to record labels. This is way back when that was like still important. And now, now you can basically, um, you can break yourself on the internet, which is cool. But the idea is everybody who becomes a musician thinks about being on stage in front of like, 10,000 people, 20,000 people. I mean, what if you're just like locally, you're popular locally in your county or in, even further out than that. You're making a living doing what you're doing. You don't have an alarm clock you have to deal with, and people love you and they come and see you. And it's only 100 people, but why does it desiring these grandiose things? And when it comes to politics, I mean, anyone who can, I was I read an article today for my Substack tomorrow that's coming out tomorrow. And I was pointing out that like Congress doesn't pass laws anymore. I mean, I'm talking about national Congress, not a state level house or anything like that. But Congress doesn't pass laws anymore unless they are passing something that only they can repeal. That only they can, it would have to be voted on. And if they're passing something, what are the chances they're going to vote to repeal it? Most everything that's done now, like when somebody runs for office and they're like, we're going to change this and we're going to change that, it's done at the presidential level. And it's done with executive orders. So you have Trump comes in, does all these executive orders, do this, do that, the other thing. Yeah, but there's a problem. The problem is that the next president who comes in can just reverse those executive orders because they're not laws. They're just the power of the president to do what he wants. So when you're being ruled by executive orders and Congress is only passing laws that they never intend to repeal, how do you expect to have change? How do you expect to have change on the federal level unless, well, it's like Tho Bishop at the Mises Institute says, over a span of years and decades, you get people into state houses and you get enough people planted into state houses, and then you run somebody nationally, and you basically do like Andrew Jackson on them, where you just basically become, what Thomas 777 calls the Protestant Mussolini, which is what Andrew Jackson was. Or you have somebody who goes in there who does just basically goes in there and hopefully has the military on their side, and they just go to war with these people, and they're like, you're going to have to kill me. And I mean, honestly, at this point, I agree with Thomas. I mean, he thinks, this government will eventually fall apart if it stays the way it is, but it could take 100 years. So in the meantime, work on your national stuff, work on your state level stuff, look at that 100-year window, see if you can promote what you would like to see replace this. But if you want to have any power at all, it's got to be on the local level. And if you're somebody who shares the values that we have, you're not going to do that in New York City or Atlanta or Miami or Orlando, or Charlotte. No, you're going to do that in tiny little towns like, we live in. And, I mean, I don't know about you, but where I live, I mean, how much of the woke touches you? Where you live, Utah. I'm not gonna dox you, at all. Even mention the state. How much of the woke even touches you where you are? Maybe a little bit, but not what somebody's getting in a city.
Oh, it's nothing compared to the city. You're basically just being like covered in it all the time in the city. We still get drops here because of, again, colleges and universities, but it's nothing compared to what cities are nowadays.
I mean, I haven't seen where I live. I think most people know that I live in Auburn, Alabama right now, but I'm going to be leaving very soon. Even in a college town, I mean, a huge college, old college, I don't remember the last time I saw like a trans person here, in the supermarket or in a restaurant or anything like that. It's pretty much Southern white and black folks, who go to church on Sunday. And even if they don't believe it, they still go to church on Sunday. I mean, good luck. And we were talking before we started recording about, I was saying, I would love to go up to New York just to like show my wife where I grew up and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't even want to go to New York because I mean, the people are just, it's like an alien race to me at this point.
Yeah, it sort of is just like kind of we're at that point where like entropy is really showing like how low quality their worldview makes you once you've like fully just like accepted it and like you've taken the blue pill, so to speak, and you become a show for it. And you become this ugly, you embrace your vices and become essentially like a fat, disgusting person. And you're supported by that system and doing that decision. You become as fat as you want. Do the drugs. You won't be persecuted. However, what that does over time is that turns you into a very low quality human being, and that kind of really destroys and like corrupts the places they live in, which makes them even more shit over time. So it becomes less and less appealing to even be around the centers of power because of these low quality people.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, if people be like, oh, well, define low quality, everything like that. I mean, I was thinking today about like, and I was thinking about it I've been thinking about it for a few days. I think I wrote about it the other day and just mentioned it, didn't write about it, wasn't like a thing. And then I heard somebody else say it. And truth, like actual natural truth, nature, you know, it's calming. It's something that when you hear it, it doesn't bring you any kind of, there's no stress. It doesn't make you anxious. It's something that just, yeah, that's exactly, you hear it and you're like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When people are telling you, I mean, beating a dead horse, but like the trans issue and everything, what, I mean, you hear that and you immediately, it's not something that you can accept on your own. This is something that you have to be convinced of, that you have to be propagandized into. And there's going to be, you're going to struggle against it if you're not, what Ted Kaczynski called someone who's over socialized. And yeah, that's the kind of people that I want to be around. I want to be around people who, when you say, hey, for civilization, the what you would the optimal situation for civilization is a man, a woman, and kids, a family, who believe in God and believe in objective truths and not subjective truths. So, I, the way I look at it is when I'm out in the country and I'm talking to people at, these little stores, you still got little independent stores out there. And they're like, "Hey, you walk in and they're like, yeah, you're not from around here, right?" And they're not meaning anything by it. That's the way they're like, "Hey, I've never seen you before." And you start talking to them, you start talking about simple things. You're not you're not on the Lower East Side in New York where, people want to talk about the latest thing that Trump said or something like that and how much of a piece of crap he is and everything, how much of a racist and how he was literally Hitler and stuff like that. I don't have anything for these people. There is nothing, there's nothing there. What are we going to talk about? What do we have in common? Why would I want to have these conversations that are just going to make me stressful? I mean, anyone who's on Twitter has to know that if you're a partisan and if you're a partisan on the right and you go on Twitter and you just start looking around, there are things there that are really, they're going to upset you and physically. sometimes I just have to get off Twitter, and I'm just like, I'm scrolling, see this, and I'm like, this is only there to upset me. This is only there to demoralize me and make me upset. So you know, if I'm not willing to put up with that, as much as if I try to run away from that on Twitter when I see it, why would I want that in real life?
Yeah, and I feel like now, unfortunately, having the sort of thing that Dave does, where he watches some of these progressives, it's becoming quite clear to me that they're at that stage where they're starting to get on the cusp of being like, it's time to genocide the kulaks.
Mhm.
And they're getting very close to that openly. And I think the only thing that's kind of really stopping them is the regime giving them the all clear to do it. It's just becoming very visceral to me. Kind of the way they talk about Red America Christians, with just this extreme disdain and vitriol and anger. And they really do want to kill you. It's not a meme. It's not a joke. That's how they legitimately feel. And you can really see this embodied in the way that they talk about Russian soldiers,
Mhm.
and how they look at dead Russian soldiers, and they laugh and they smile and they say that it's a good thing. And what that actually is, that's a replacement for you, what they want to do to you.
Mhm.
Um, and that's quite terrifying. It's just kind of realizing that's the state we're at this point.
Yeah, when they
Mm,
see a dead Russian soldier, they see a white Southern
mm.
Christian. That's what they want. I mean, it's not hyperbole at this point. And they're so used to winning. They're so used to like the quote unquote right wing, which is just basically boomer cons living under the boomer truth regime, the Nuremberg regime, the New Deal regime. That when they call them a fascist, you're either going to get, well, I'm not I'm not a fascist. You're a fascist, or the left are the real fascists, the left are the real racists. And when you're just like, and what are you going to do about it? When you're like, and okay, all right, I'm going to accept whatever. I'm going to become whatever it is that scares you the most. I'm going to adopt that. I mean, I had like Antifa last night, like right before I went to bed. I just decided these Antifa guys just decided. Well, they call themselves Antifa. None of these people, the original Italian anti-fascists, would line these guys up against the wall first. Um, the, they were just started blocking me because I'm just like, I'm not going to take your bullshit. It's like, I mean, yeah, I know we're on Twitter, and I know everybody can be a badass on Twitter, but anyone who's met me in real life knows that the way I talk on social media is the way I talk, and the way I talk on my podcast is the way I talk when I'm looking you in your eyes. That doesn't mean that I'm a badass, doesn't mean I want to fight people, doesn't mean I want to hurt anybody, but they do. So what you gonna do? What you gonna do? I mean, if they do, if they do decide it's time to kill the kulaks, they're gonna have a hard time, where I'm moving to. They're it's gonna be they're not coming out there. They're going into this, they're gonna go into the look in the inner cities and in the suburbs, but they're not coming out to farmland. They're not coming out to hill country, because they know what'll happen to them. They're gonna go for the soft targets. And that's why I've been trying to tell people, for, you know, 2 years now, 2.5 years, get the hell out of cities. I know that your culture might be in that city, your family might be in that city, your mom, dad, people you care about, but, especially if you have a wife, husband, and kids, like, just get the hell out. I mean, you should as soon as COVID hit, people should have been working on this. I know that's when I kicked it into high gear 'cause I was living, like, literally in, like, unincorporated Atlanta at the time. I was driving to work, and I'm not bragging, But I mean, I was basically, when COVID hit, and especially when the summer of George kicked off, I was taking my Uzi to work with me. I mean, and I had it in my office with me because you don't know what these people are going to do. And maybe people have forgotten about 2020. Maybe people have forgotten about the people, who were the 30 plus. It might be more than that. Who knows, because we don't get reporting, good reporting, that were just murdered in the streets by savages, by people who just need to be dealt with, that needed to be dealt with at that time, but were actually apparatchiks for the regime. Were getting bailed out of jail. The vice president of the United States now was talking about, bailing people out of jail who got arrested for quote unquote protesting. Mostly peaceful protests. I mean, I don't know what to tell people now if they're still in a city. I mean, I know it's hard, but survival's also important. I mean, I know there's some cities like, there are still some bigger cities, the bigger cities in Oklahoma and everything, that are still pretty red and everything. But yeah,
That's quickly even changing too.
Yeah, but most people live on the coasts. It's like what, 70 to 80% of the population of the United States lives, within 100 miles of the coast or something like that. Well, that's where all the bad stuff is.
Yeah, that's where the enemy can quickly recruit a kulak killing mob to come get you, and people forget how quick that, it doesn't take that long for them to do that. As we saw in 2020, the regime has their back 100%. And if you try to defend yourself, you will be Kyle Rittenhouse.
Oh yeah.
You will not be allowed to defend yourself if they just don't murder you by that point. I mean, I don't know how far it's going to go, but as we always say, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Their current situation with these people, because they're NPCs. You really can't talk with them. I mean that literally. They don't have an inner monologue with them. They're just complete. They're like hammers, essentially, for the regime to hammer down any rogue nails that aren't completely in line with whatever the regime is talking about pushing or going along with at any given time, and they can just be used and thrown at you at will.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, do you really want to talk to them? Do you really want to? Do you really want to? Even if you had a chance, do you want to negotiate with these people? I mean, I can see somebody saying, yes, we need peace. We can't live like this. And I totally get that. But, Charles Haywood says that it's a religion, but he doesn't believe that many of them are willing to die for it. But they are willing to mutilate their bodies and, destroy their lives and take chemicals that they put chemicals in their body that they admit will probably drastically reduce their lifespan and everything. So as much as I love Charles, I don't know. It seems like a lot of them are willing to.
I would say so, especially what we saw during COVID. I mean, the fanatics who enforced the mask mandate upon us all. I mean, these awfuls and other client groups ruthlessly enforced the mask policy upon us all, and shamed you for it if you weren't wearing 50 masks or whatever Fauci was saying at the time. And your family would shame you too in some parts. Not all families, of course, but some would shame you if you didn't get the jab. I mean, I wouldn't underestimate them. Now that doesn't mean they're incredibly strong, but again, there's strength in numbers here, and they have the backing of the regime, which is quite important as well.
That's probably more important than anything, and I think it's something that people don't, people don't think about, is the fact that they are backed by the regime. They are, you bring up like the Soros DAs. It sounds like a boomer kind of thing to bring it up, because mostly you started hearing about it first on boomer websites. People be like, "Oh, that's just boomer. You're a conservative. You're a conservative because you're bringing this up." It's like, really? So they basically put in place district attorneys. You don't even have to have the cops on your side to do this. Cops arrest people. They take them to jail, and then the legal system takes over. So if the legal system takes over and you will let somebody out who broke into your home, but will throw the book at you if you tried to shoot them. Famously, Sam Francis called that anarcho tyranny, and I love that there's a lot of people who call themselves anarchists that it really bothers them that he used that term. But yeah, if you have a two-tiered system where normal white Christian men and women are at the bottom, and basically people who can run the streets and are willing to run the streets and savagely just attack their fellow um, people that their neighbor. I mean, we have a serious problem then. We have a serious problem, and I think it's amazing to me that how many people. Well, it's probably because of brainwashing, them controlling the narrative, the schools, everything, basically everything, controlling everything. Even the churches. A lot of the churches have fallen to it. People don't even question this stuff. People don't. They just go along with it, or they like trans rights, stuff like that. It's like, well, trans people need rights for what? What? Well, so that they're not, you know, violence isn't committed against them. Okay, well, there's laws in place that you can't commit violence against another person. So what are we looking for? They're looking to, just like they did with blacks with the Civil Rights Act, they're creating another.
Client group.
Yeah, yeah, they're just creating another group that is protected, and if you speak out against them, it's proper. A lot of people have properly said, and I think it's 100% true, that basically the Civil Rights Act replaced the Constitution. So we don't have freedom of speech anymore. That's part of the boomer truth regime. It's just boomer truth 100%. And yeah, and there are groups that are elevated higher than other groups. And I'm not talking about like just police and government officials with sovereign or qualified immunity. I'm talking about your neighbor. You have neighbors. A lot of people have neighbors who are of a different class than them. And I don't know why anybody is still fighting to preserve this at a grand scale. I don't. It seems to be brainwashing, and it just seems to be, tradition. Just this holding on to this tradition of, and this whole, I also see the China psyop and everything. Oh, if we break up, it'll be China. It'll be China. China will. Okay. All right. China will step in. Okay. That's the way they're going to get us. That's okay. Cool. Yeah. It's just, I mean, until we control the narrative, and until we, we're not, we're screwed.
Yeah, basically. This is kind of really what broke politics for me, was just realizing that, like, it's either 80% or 90% of people are just sheep, and that their opinions and thoughts are controlled by whoever is on the TV or in the mainstream media, kind of forcing their political agenda upon them. And when you have all narrative making apparatuses controlled by the left, you're never going to get a shot at convincing these people. And you really shouldn't be surprised when that moral majority is actually a progressive majority. And you're just coping with the fact that what used to exist in the 50s and 90s is kind of died out pretty much, living
Well,
on fumes.
well, and I don't think I don't know how great the 50s was. I don't know how great if the 50s can give way to the 60s, how great was the 50s? If the 90s can give way to what we have now, it just seems like everything's always just moving left. And you know, I've said at this point, people are always talking about, well, the swing back to the right is going to be devastating. I'm like, well, we're so far to the left right now. If you want to use that kind of terminology, yeah, I mean, I try not to even use that anymore too much, because it's just at this point, it's just a bunch of people who have power, who are just like forcing things. Like, it seems like they're throwing stuff up against the wall and see what sticks, as far as just the outrage that they can come up with. But yeah, I mean, things are just, it seems like the further, let's use this terminology, the further we go away from order, the more chaos we get. And until someone decides that they desire order over chaos, and until somebody starts working towards that, and I'm a believer in elite theory, until we get some people who have the influence and the money to start talking about order again, and start we're gonna keep going left. And I don't have any confidence in like of this radical uprising, or and when I say uprising, I'm not talking about violent. I'm talking about just like a shift, like a paradigm shift in people's minds, that we need to go back. And I think it's going to take something more than that. And once again, to repeat, we need our own elites.
Yeah, I feel like COVID should have really kind of broken that spell, as the 2020 election did for me. It kind of was just like, yeah, um, politics is completely useless. All that matters is kind of what the elites do, because they control decision-making institutions and financial resources. And if they're all on one side, or at least like sympathetic to the progressives, there is never going to be a swing back right. That's just delusional. It's pure delusion.
Well, it's got to go back to, if it's going to go back to anything, it's going to go back to order. It's going to go back to truth. It's going to go back to what's true and natural, what's good. And I don't know if you calling that right, putting that on the left or right, whatever. If people need to do that because they need to call something, that's fine. But 2020, to me, you had COVID. You had, I mean, well, even in the beginning of the year, the financial crises that were happening before COVID, should have woken people up. And then you have COVID, that didn't wake people up. You had the summer of George, that didn't wake people up. And then you have the election, and then J6, and that didn't wake people up. I mean, there are still people who are just, they have the same ideology, they believe the same things. There's a lot of Pollyanna utopians out there. I know they would never use the term utopian. I don't give a shit. Who, they're, nothing changed for them. Like, to me, reality changed. Like, people act different now. It is very clear that people are not, the overwhelming majority of people are not willing to fight for quote unquote liberty, quote unquote freedom, whatever that meant in the American context, or to people. I always say, if ask 7 billion people what freedom means to them, and 7 billion people are going to give you have 7 billion different answers. But for the most part, I think that people are just waiting to be led. And I don't know that they even consciously know they're waiting to be led. They need someone who's going to wake them out of that slumber, and they're going to be like, okay, lead me. And I just, until that happens, I just think it has to, there are people who can do that. It's a lot easier to do that. What Hans Hermann Hoppe calls a natural elite. It's a lot easier for a natural elite at the local level to fight against this and lead people and find protections for people than it's going to be at the national level, because the national level is just, like I said earlier, is just so far gone at this point.
Yeah, and I feel like kind of segueing onto a different subject. Our kind of vision of what collapse actually means is also very flawed. It's also very boomer-esque in its view, where it's just going to be this event that just happens, and like we're all, wearing BDS uniforms and buggies in the desert somehow,
Well,
and everything blows up.
it's not even that. I know people who think they're waiting for everything to collapse, and then they think that everybody's automatically going to adopt their political ideology. Oh, well, I mean, what? These people don't even know. Half the people don't even know what the ideology is. A lot of them have rejected it out of hand. It's like, I mean, what is it going? What are you looking for? I mean, people who want, I entertained collapse at one point, but then I realized how many people are going to get hurt. How many people are going to die basically if we have like a collapse, if the government collapses, if trade routes collapse. I mean, all these things. If how many people are just not going to make it? And I mean, I think the whole idea of locally working on building up locally also helps against that too. But I mean, I don't want it to happen. I would rather just have I mean, I think it's just going to have to be a gradual change over time, or it's going to be like um, a wake up. I mean, it's just going to be an overturning of some sort, like the Andrew Jackson kind of figure coming in and just, breaking stuff. And I mean, that's really the only way I don't even really think that changing over time is what's going to happen. I think that'll happen. I think that'll happen to some people, and I think that'll happen to some localities. But as far as Washington D.C. goes, I mean, you can only see it getting worse, But they can also keep it going for a long time. There are some really, really smart people up there who, well, I will call them smart and devious, who have figured out how to like print money endlessly and keep that going, keep that system going. So if they can do that, I mean, which should seem impossible to most people, at least anyone who has like a little economic knowledge, then why do you think that all of this is going to fall apart in your lifetime?
I don't know. I think honestly, it's mostly a cope for not doing anything. And they also kind of they're accelerationist, or they kind of view it as like, well, it's going to collapse anyway. There's nothing you can do anyway, so you might as well just consume the football, and go to Olive Garden on the weekends, and just kind of wait for everything to break down and become. What's that movie we always like to use for a post-apocalyptic world for some reason?
Road Warrior?
Yeah, Road Warrior, where everything's going to be like Road Warrior for some reason. I don't know why. That one specifically. But it's extremely flawed. I mean, we really haven't seen this vision bear out really anywhere. Even in like our favorite kind of collapsitarian society, South Africa. Kind of what I've seen from the South Africans who I've talked with, it's more of just a gradual breakdown of everything, and not something that just kind of burns. The house doesn't just like collapse all at once, and they can keep it going for a while. and things will just get worse and worse.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. Again, I don't see how people think that it can. It's all just going to fall apart one day. I mean, it may, but to think if these people have been able to keep it keep it going for this long, what makes you think that they just don't have the next thing ready to be rolled out? And most people will beg for it. Most people will be like, "Well, everything just collapsed. What are you going to do? What are we going to do?" Well, no, we have this idea, and people will beg for it because most people won't be ready for it. Yeah, it's just we know how people are. It's not believing that people. You know, I don't know. It's so frustrating when you think of just and I don't want to sound like I'm all arrogant because I figured all this out and other people haven't. It's just my path and everything. But if you have figured this out and you want to stop it, I really think you're just going to have to step up and do it on your own and take leadership. Take your become a leader locally. Do you think just step up? Because otherwise, I mean, really, what's going to you know I mean, you're just waiting for somebody when that person could be you. And I mean, it sounds scary. You can put yourself out there and everything, but it's going to have to be done.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna have to like get over this like deeply embedded like aversion to like risk and everything. Because we actually have to do things here. I mean, as we said before in this live stream, they're already at the point where they want to kill the kulaks. And the only thing that stops them is just the go ahead from the commissars. So we really need people to step up and like build either local communities or like take over your local area, because again they really need your help. Because again, I attended one of these GOP meetings and it was filled with boomers who are in their 80s or 70s, and like they were begging for people to take over leadership positions at like school boards. They didn't have people to run, and guess who won in those districts? It was a progressive, because just nobody contested them. And that's what you kind of see across the country, this pattern, even in red states. I feel like it's worse in red states because they have this deeply embedded bias of, well, it's already red, and I don't have to do anything. And we really have to get over that mindset, because again, the left doesn't like magically stop in blue states. They're coming for everything. They're not going to stop at Texas or Florida or Georgia. They're coming for Oklahoma. They're coming for Arizona. They're coming for West Virginia. They want absolute control, and they believe they have the right to rule. And the right doesn't have that mindset yet, and we have to change that. I believe for anything to actually get better in the long run.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about that. I wrote an article that I never released about that. Probably going to try to rewrite it. Basically saying, and it's not an original thought, but making my own arguments for why the right has to stop being so averse to political power. I understand that most people who would be considered culturally right wing, they just want to be left alone. Okay, they just want to grill. Famously, the famous meme. That's all they want to do. But well, if that's the attitude now, if that's where you're staying, it's just going to get worse, and it's going to come. If there's not pushback, if there's not plans made, if there's not organization, it's going to come for you. They're going to come for you because they're not going to stop. I mean, we've seen the way they've done this in the past, especially the ones who hate families, hate religion. Read the authoritarian personality, and you look at all the things that they say. Oh, these are the things that will that make your F scale go up, so you will identify that you're a fascist of some sort. I mean, it's like anyone who, basically any white male who has a family and goes to church is on that scale. I mean, not all of them, because, like I said, churches have become really fucked now. But you're on that scale now, and that's the way they look at you. They look at you as the enemy, as a potential threat to them. And once you go down that road of them pointing and looking at you and being like, well, you have the potential. They've started wars over, potential. Oh, they might have WMDs. They're looking, they're, you know, 3 weeks away from having a nuclear bomb, things like that. Well, what are they going to do? Little old you, I mean, I also tend to, because I know how the finance of government works. I know that they don't have a lot of, they don't have the funds to police the whole country in such a way. They would need the help of state and local government, which is why I think the state and local government especially, is more important than anything. The ATF and the DEA, agencies like that, cannot operate in the United States without the help of local law enforcement. So if your sheriff is one of those people who's like, the ATF shows up and they're like, we think this person has a pistol braced, short barrel rifle. Um, you know, if he's like, no, no, you're not going to do that here. Get the hell out of here. We don't enforce these laws. Then you have a problem. There's a potential of this coming for you. I mean, and I'm not one of these people who's like, they're gonna Waco everyone and everything. But the closer you live to cities, and the worse your local government and state government is, the better chance.
It might be better or lower, but I feel like we kind of like have to, regardless of if they might kind of use power against you. Like, you kind of have to do something. Otherwise, it's just going to get to the point where they're going to surround your community, and there's going to be nobody there to help you or back you up. And then your freedom arguments aren't going to help you as they try you in their kangaroo court and sentence you to be shot. It really is going to help you then, and it'll be too late by that point. And I feel like that will be the fate for many. So, like, even though that is a valid concern, and I fully understand that, obviously you shouldn't do stupid things like compounds and stuff. But like, we have to do stuff. We have to build things locally because there's no institution that's allied with you. Like, there's no based Elon Musk who's going to come help you out. None of these people are on your side. So like,
Oh,
you have to do it, which is the unsexy answer.
no, and even Elon Musk isn't going to be there for you. No one. Tucker Carlson's not going to be there for you. They're not. These people are not going to be there for you. So what are you expecting? What are you going to do? Are you just going to just sit around and, I mean, at least take care of yourself, at least try to get your income, driving your income as far away from corporations that, are, almost all the corporations are woke now. And, food supply, local food supply, things like that. To at least take care of yourself if you're not interested in anything else. So try to have some community, though. It's hard to, the people who have this fantasy about, oh, when things get bad, I'm just going up on my roof with my 308 and I'm just going to shoot people as they come onto your land. Well, you're going to run out of ammo pretty soon. I mean, you run out of ammo eventually. And that may work, because if if it did come to that horrible, that scenario out of a movie, you shoot a couple people, they're going to go away. But they'll eventually be back. I mean, you need community. We were meant to be. It's very easy for people to abandon the idea of community when they look around and they see that most people, don't share, a lot of people don't share their values, but I also think there are a lot of people who look at look at people and they're like, well, that person doesn't believe this. Well, they believe this. You guys have 90% in common, but like most Protestant churches and denominations, it's like, well, that 5% is what's going to splinter us, and why we have 9,000 denominations now.
Yeah, well, they're not based on the JQ, so we can't have a discussion with them.
But I mean, it's like we were doing a live stream for the Old Glory Club, and there were people in the chats. We're streaming it to YouTube, mind you, and there are people in the chat. Well, call them out. You have to call them out. You have to name them and everything. It's like, well, first of all, we're on YouTube and it's our channel, and we'd like to try and keep the channel as long as we can. So let's not just be stupid. Second of all, when people who say stuff like that, I wonder if they're feds.
They probably are.
Yeah, because if you're not calling them out, well, what is this all about? You're using terminology that, and not everyone there are people you're going to talk to who have valuable information, who are not going to see the enemy that you see. Or they may just not want to be public with that because they have a family and they have kids, and they're trying as hard as they can to just get by and take care of them. And then someone's like, well, if you don't call them out, then they're going to eventually come for those kids. Shut up. I mean, just shut up. You're in the comments on YouTube and Odyssey.
You're an online sperg.
Yeah, I guarantee you, no one who's making those comments has a podcast or or does a live stream that has any audience whatsoever. Because first of all, if they did, they wouldn't be watching the thing live. They'd probably be busy working and researching or reading. And two, you'd realize that if you're going to get a message out, you have to. There are some things and you're going to have to edit yourself in certain ways depending on which and what venue you're using, things like that. If I'm just on Odyssey, I know I can pretty much say whatever I want. If I'm just on BitChute, I know I can say whatever I want. If I'm on Rumble, you can pretty much say whatever you want on Rumble. But if I'm on YouTube, and the only reason I even stream to YouTube anymore is because people are fucking lazy, and they'll only, say, oh, I'm not going to watch your stream to Odyssey. What's Odyssey? That's not even real. And it's like these normie takes from quote unquote dissident right people who just want to watch it on YouTube and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, look, this fight's not going anywhere. So taking yourself out of the game at this point is just stupid. I mean, there are people who get canceled all the time, who just, and someone like Owen Benjamin, you got to give it to him. The guy got canceled. I mean, he was the first guy canceled from everything. And why was he canceled from everything? Because he said that somebody in Hollywood, the industry he was in, the guy said he was going to start transitioning his 4-year-old. And he's like, are you high? And this is in 2017. He's like, what is wrong with you? You can't do that. I mean, he kicked off of Airbnb. You can't use Airbnb, But what did he do? He went and built his own platform. But he had the ability to do that. He had people to come together with to do that. A lot of people can't do that. And, I had Owen Benjamin on I've had him on twice in the last year. And the first time I had him on, people were like, oh man, I didn't even know he existed. The dude gets 50 to 60,000 views a day on his live streams. Are you sure you just didn't go looking? Because your attention span. I mean, if I disappeared off of Twitter, how many? You have 24,000 followers on Twitter. If I disappeared off of Twitter, how many do you think would come looking for me?
Probably like 5. Five,
That is
10, maybe
exactly the number I was going to use.
very small.
Yeah, because they don't. It's like, well, I'm on Twitter because this is what's comfortable for me. This is what I know. I'm not going to go and use something else, and I understand that reasoning. But don't act like you care. Don't act like you know, you know I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm so frustrated by people who just they everything is a no true Scotsman fallacy. Well, you're not right wing enough. Okay, that's fine. I mean, okay. I don't know what more do I need to do, in order to be right wing, and what the hell is right wing to you anyway? And if someone wants to, use terms on my show that are going to get me flagged, well, I mean, I may just have to, bleep that or something, because, I mean, I don't want that. I mean, e- e- I mean, I just don't think people understand the fight that we're in at this point. And, we're not in, it's not 1933 and the elections are happening. It's like 1921. And people think that, like, victory is right around the corner. It's insane to me that people are so delusional, and they think they want you to talk like we're in power. They have no idea. No idea.
No, it's like these people refuse to accept the fact that we live in like the Soviet Union in the 1950s. Under Stalin, they're acting like we're going to like restore the Tsar or something. Like it's just around the corner or something like that. I mean, it's dangerous. Honestly, it's a dangerous mindset because you don't see reality for how it actually is, and like how like outnumbered you are, and like that this giant machine, which has all power, hates you and wants to destroy you and can at any minute without any repercussions. And like people won't remember you when you die. Like that's really the state we're in. We don't live in this like mid-century Germany or something, or like it's around the corner. It's dangerous, honestly, to have these fantasies at this point, because again, they're ready to kill the kulaks. Like we really need to like hammer this point in. All they need is the go ahead from the commissar.
No, it's important. It's important to call out the Jays on YouTube. That's what's gonna help us win.
Yeah, you just have to like destroy everything you worked for because one online sperg said you have to.
Yeah, and these
It's
people,
worth it.
sure, yeah, and these people they don't even realize that, like, the United States could not have one J in in on the land, in power, anywhere, and that's still the spirit until you defeat the spirit of what has been created here. Nothing's going to change.
Definitely.
Because you have 2%, what, 2% of the population? You think 2% of the population can do this all by themselves without having people who follow along? You think you just get rid of all them, and you get rid, and then anyone who complains about getting rid of, what are you doing here? You literally are going to have to the spirit of the age. The spirit of the age is going to have to change, and some of us believe that that spirit may be ordained by God as whatever punishment, for whatever reason. Well, maybe God will change it once you change your heart, once you change your thinking, once you start acting like you deserve it. I don't know. There's one theory.
Well, it's better than just like this like self-destructive like kamikaze mission of let's just name them, and like we need to throw away everything you worked for while we're on enemy platforms because I define what's based, and that you're not going far enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah, as some friends who have a podcast called Timeline Earth, Started out as a libertarian comedy podcast, and now I don't know what it is. They're just insane. But they've had this running joke since the beginning of it that they hate, like they hate their fans. You know, that their fans hate them and they hate their fans and everything. And I don't. Every time I meet like people in real life, like, they're like, "Yeah, man, I listen to the show. I really appreciate what you do." I mean, I've had people like last year. I haven't traveled much this year, but last year I was in and out of airports. And I had people walk up to me in airports and ask, "Are you Pete?" and everything. And it was just, it was like, "Yeah, I don't agree with everything you have to say, but man, keep doing what you're doing." Things like that. You know, I think one of the big problems is that social media in general, and just the fact that very much like libertarianism, a lot of dissident right people are, a lot of spergs are get attracted to it. They just, I just think socially they don't know what they're doing. Yeah, that, there's also anger, you know, pent up anger and everything. And one thing that Thomas and I talk about is the fact that, since both of us are basically have like Calvinist beliefs, we're just like, well, I mean, it's kind of hard to walk around angry all the time, because we know that, whatever is happening, God's ordaining this. It's just a matter of why, and will He change it if we start acting in a certain way? Will He change us? Will He make it so that if we individually or as a group, a small group, change the way we think, change the way we act, and will He bless us? And I think that people don't, there's a certain element of the dissident right that calls themselves pagans, who, they don't see that, and everything to them has to be, well, if we can just go back to, the way it was before Trump got elected, and social media had all this free speech and everything. And I don't agree with that, even though I may really like people who have that opinion. I just don't agree with it. I think if you're really paying attention and you're looking, especially, just to famously use this trans thing, if you're really paying attention to what's happening there, and you really start drilling down into the nuts and bolts of it, there's something really spiritually evil about it. There's something that really can't be explained just by, oh, there was brainwashing happened here, and this is just. I think there's something more, and it's hard because a lot of, if you hold different beliefs, then you have a tendency to see different paths to victory. And it's one of the things that I think, that certain group that defeated this enemy that we're dealing with, I think it's one of the reasons why they focused on race and didn't focus on religion or anything like that, because they realized they had so many people who came together, who had different religious beliefs, that if they concentrated on just being, Prussians, that was something that they could rally around.
I also feel like a big weakness that we kind of have is this like lack of a positive vision. Really, there's really a lack of a positive vision, besides like hating the evil around us, which is very understandable. There's no like vision for, all right, well, what's our vision for the future then? Like, because you have to have something to inspire the people who are going to plant the trees whose shade you're never going to enjoy, right? It can't just be, well, we hate the Satanists and the trans people and like the people who are destroying our country and society. Well, that's not enough. Like, okay, let's say they're destroyed and we remove them from power. Well, then what? Like, what's your vision for how we're going to govern society and like a future that's actually worth living, that our children would be happy living in? I feel like that's the bigger kind of question, and that doesn't mean it's like it's easy to answer this question, but like we don't have this. Like, I don't see it really. And like maybe we're going to come up with that at some point. I think we will, but like we just don't have it yet.
Yeah, no, it's vision is important, and that's it's always been a problem in political movements where, or in any kind of movement where people they're they can diagnose. There's 95% to 97% of the people can diagnose what's wrong or that there is something wrong, but the fact that people, I mean, the solutions on how to deal with it, yeah, those are few and far between. I think I've used the analogy of working in a repair shop, in an auto repair shop. I've worked in many, and I worked in one that was huge. It was a huge car dealership, and they had to have like 30 or 40 technicians alone. And you know, most car repairs now are just plugging computer in, and computer tells you what's wrong and you fix it. But you know, there are some stuff that comes in that just, you know, what is this and how is it happening? And it's confusing. And there's only like out of those 40, there'd be like two that could diagnose the they could diagnose the problem and give you the solution as to how to fix it. And you know, those are the most valuable people, and those are usually the people that make the most money. And you know, those are the people who have the highest esteem. And you know, when it comes to politics and trying to figure out issues that to repair what is broken, and there is much. In the starting point is, you know, what's the starting point at this, you know, at this juncture? And it's going to be few. It's going to be few and far between. You know, you can go on Twitter and you can see a bunch of people who know what the problem is, have given it a name, but when they try to come up with a solution, you can just instinctively look at it and go, yeah, that's not going to work. So I think we are in the phase right now of, I mean, I think we're, as far as I'm concerned, we're past the diagnosis phase. Right now, we should just be talking about solutions, but they have to be realistic solutions. You know, overthrowing the government is not going to, you know, armed revolt is not going to work. I mean, I don't see it happening. So it's going to have to be something within politics itself. I don't think it's Bitcoin. I don't think it's Bitcoin doesn't fix degeneracy. Yeah. And so, you know, I don't know where to, a lot of the people I know who are involved in it are degenerates, not everyone. So, you know, what now shall we do? I think that's the main question.
I definitely agree. That kind of needs to be our primary focus here, besides just like endlessly droning on about the problems that we face. But with that being said, we're 10 minutes above the hour, so it's been an excellent conversation, Quinones. Is there anything you would like to share or promote to the audience as we kind of leave the stream?
Yeah, the Pete Quinones show. I'm not on YouTube. I pretty much just put like clips now, and then in the comments I have links to Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute. But all the podcatchers still have my podcast on there, which is nice. And I don't think they'll be getting rid of mine. If they got rid of mine, there'd be a bunch that I listen to that they'd get rid of before mine. And PeteSubstack.com. I have taken to making every attempt to write at least 3 times a week. And that's where I try to, that started out as a project of just getting my thoughts out there. And then I think it turned into rage porn for a while, which I didn't like. And now I think it's where I try to put any ideas that I have about how to fix this, or to maybe look at how other people are talking about fixing it and either incorporate it into mine or say this needs tweaking because I don't think it's going to work when you consider this. And I don't try to attack any. Charles Haywood says no enemies to the right, so I'm not going to rip on people who people like that. But there are some leftists out there right now who have insinuated themselves into the quote unquote right, that are trying to put solutions out there. And I will take them to task, because when they release their solutions, I look at them and I think that they're psychotic at best and devious at worst.
Well, like our good friend Walrus likes to say, patrolling our perimeter at this point is more important than attacking the enemy. I fully agree with that.
Yep.
But with that being said, if you did enjoy this live stream, subscribe and like this channel. It's free, so just take the second to do it. And it's always appreciated. Remember, everyone, the light can't last forever. Keep your hopes